Hello, everybody. Welcome to Co-Creation Station, the podcast where we talk about the law of attraction, the art of allowing spiritual magic, the mind-body-spirit connection, and how to best enjoy this mystical, miraculous, mysterious, crazy, sometimes confounding, but always incredible journey we call life. My name is Collin. I'm located in beautiful, sunny North Hollywood, California.
My name is Stephanie Orlina, and I am a transformational life coach, and I am in San Diego, California.
Thank you so much for listening or watching or both. We do want to let you know at the top here that we often mention some names you may not be familiar with, especially if this is your first time listening or watching us. we sorry. We often mention Abraham Hicks and Esther Hicks here on the pod. If you're not familiar with those names, Esther is a speaker and author who channels Abraham. Abraham is described as a group of entities from beyond our physical world who share their wisdom by speaking through Esther at workshops and speaking opportunities around the world. You can find more about them by searching on your web browser or here on YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube. You can also find out more information at their website, abraham-hicks.com. Each week we start our discussion from a different jumping off point. This week, Stephanie, you said you had your, as I choke here,
I
drink
know,
some water. You have our topic for today.
good thing
Our
I'm going to be speaking now so that you can take care of
I
yourself.
am going to mute myself for a second. So you're
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, I was listening to a really great Abraham that I had found on YouTube, and I wanted to talk about this. So most of us, and I've done this for most of my life, use our power, our thoughts and our beliefs, and we use them against ourselves by doubting, worrying, by not believing that we can be, do, or have anything. And we think in opposition to it a lot. That, oh, it's not happening because, or it won't happen because, or, instead of doing the opposite, and maybe not sharing, and maybe, yeah, so like, I was just thinking how simple it is.
mm,
All I need to do is believe and expect that what I want is coming,
mm-hmm.
and then let go and just live my life, whatever comes up, do the next indicated thing. And yet so many of us, including myself, have not done that. We don't do that. Like, and I'm thinking of Helen Hadsell. I know I've mentioned her before here. She was, I think it was in the 60s or so. She won, she became the contest queen. She
Oh yeah,
read the book, is it Norman Vincent Peale's Positive Thinking?
yes. The
And
power
she,
of positive thinking.
the power of positive thinking. And she even says, I was very naive. Well, he says, like, get really clear on what you want, see yourself having it, just believe that it is. And so she did that, and she won her first contest. And then she won another one, and then another, and because she had innocently had created a very strong belief that she could be, do, or have anything she wanted. And she, for the rest of her life, she won houses and trips and cars and little things at the beginning for kids. And I was reminded today or the other day, like, yeah, Steph, you know, all of us, and I say this often, we all have wanted something and then we ended up getting it.
Mm,
We all have, many things like that. And when I began to practice, with my spa, seeing myself having it, what does it feel like? Seeing myself living it, it eventually came about. And so let's do that. Let's do that more often. Let's support each other in doing that. If someone's talking about, they keep going on about something they don't have, it's like, well, use your innate power. Start practicing. Because what do we have to lose by believing?
yeah, I mean, it's a really great point, and I think what occurs to me as it's like a sub point of that is like when I watched the film The Secret for the first time, which is like a really good introduction to the law of attraction for a lot of people. Um, what I sort of remembered from it and started to try to work with was, visualize, what you want, the three-step process they talk about there, which is like ask, believe, receive, I think is kind of the thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So but I kind of missed or didn't get it at a deep level, I guess is the way to say it, the believe part,
Mm,
and it that is to me can be tricky, because belief is it's like a state of mind, in a way. It's
mhm,
like where you're
mhm,
not questioning it.
mhm.
Like we believe that there are fish in the ocean and we don't have to question that. Like if somebody came up and said there have never been any fish in the ocean, like that wouldn't rattle you because you're like, okay, dude, like I'm pretty
I've
sure
seen
there's fish
fish
in
in
the
the
ocean.
ocean. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know um but yeah, things like the things we talk about on this show, like that life is meant to be abundant and that everybody can, you know I mean, the first time I heard Esther say you can be, do, or have anything you want, like the amount of the waterfall of negative thoughts in my brain that followed hearing that the first time was like, what? You gotta be kidding me, that can't be right. And but it's true.
uh,
Like it's so great it's true. And yet, so the problem isn't is that sentence true? The problem is, can you get yourself to a point where you believe it?
absolutely. I think we can.
Yeah. And I
It's
think
just a practice because we've
what I've
only
learned is
practiced
that's
the
what it
other
is. Yeah.
thing. Because
Yeah.
even those montage of negative thoughts that you said that came up when you heard Abraham say, you can be, do, or have anything you want, those thoughts were only maybe your parents, your
Hmm.
teachers, your
Yeah.
aunts and uncles, whoever was
Yeah.
around you as you were growing up, you heard them say over and over again things
Right.
like that.
Right.
And so those are beliefs, thoughts that then you incorporated, and I have them too. And so it really is about a retraining. We've talked about neural pathways.
Hmm.
And so in what I was saying earlier about it's like a muscle and
Hmm.
strengthening that belief muscle, um so that we can get to a point where it's like, yeah, just like I don't even think about, is there going to be enough air? Am I
Hmm.
the next time I take a
Yeah.
breath, is there
Yeah.
going to be that
Yeah.
never even enters my mind.
Every now and then, we don't talk about this a lot, but every now and then I'll watch something, maybe it's Esther or, something law of attraction based, and they'll talk about how, like, the million things that are going on right now to keep you alive, like
Yeah,
your
I love
body,
that.
like, you know, moving your blood around your body the way it needs to go, and your lungs breathing the air in and getting
The cells,
all
every
the
cell
stuff
of our
from the air it
body. Yeah.
needs, and then breathing out and getting rid of everything you don't need, and your stomach processing what you eat and all this stuff, your fingernails and hair growing and whatever, or falling out depending on your age, um, but yeah, and then we're like, oh, there's no way the universe could give me $50. It's like,
or
it's
or
like,
or wait a minute, or even a million.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
everything you just said, and you didn't even touch upon
yeah,
everything that occurs within each and
right,
everyone's body.
right,
Like that and
yeah,
the solar system and the flora and the
yeah. That's
fauna,
the other thing. It's like, yeah, the
everything
universe.
around
Yeah.
us. And I think the universe can't give me $1 million. Like,
Well,
what? That yeah.
it's funny because there's this. I think I mentioned this on. I don't know if it was last week or the week before. There's been this scandal in the financial world, uh, with this guy Sam Bankman-Fried, and he was on trial, and he got found guilty on all counts this week. But I kind of obsessed with the story, so I've just been listening to podcasts and things about, because there weren't any cameras in the courtroom, so everybody's getting their news from, like, people going to the court session and then talking about it on YouTube, whatever. And it's just so interesting because, like, obviously there's a whole thing about the crimes he committed. I'm not I'm not saying anything great about that, but like this dude, partly because of his relatively privileged upbringing. I mean, he was the son of two uh, fairly wealthy professors at Stanford University in the Bay Area here in California, and like, and then when he went to MIT and, like, he started working in a financial firm in New York City, like, just that whole world was like, making millions is like the expectation. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. He was like, but I gotta get, I have to become a billionaire. Like that was when he was just like, okay, and like his view of like, yeah, that'll be a little harder, but I can do it, and like, having been raised as like a middle class American and lived that kind of life most of my life, it's just like if somebody said, "Oh, Collin, you could get a job with some company and double your income," my first reaction is like, "That's crazy," and that's, I mean, I don't even know what the percentage of what Sam, like, and I just remember hearing, I think it was somebody retelling it, but he was giving a talk or something long before the crimes came to light, and he was just saying something about like how at one point he made like $10 million in a month, and he's like, "Oh, we gotta do better than that." I was just like,
And that goes back, let's just let's set aside the crimes.
yeah, and
But
it's just been
yeah,
on my
like,
mind, like how
yeah,
comfortable he was
there's so
believing
many
it.
other examples that we could
Yeah,
give.
yeah, yeah.
But
My bad.
that expectation, right? That expectation.
That's what strikes me. It's just like,
That expectation of course,
yeah,
I can have a check for $1 million written out to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
Of course I can deposit $1 million into my
yeah.
account and then disperse it in any way that I choose. And then I think it's the letting go of the how.
Well, that's, yeah, because the thing for me about the how, well, one thing, there's different aspects to that we've talked about before, but one aspect of that is how my brain, and I think a lot of people's brains, even if they don't use the hard math of it, they use statistics. Their negative voice that doesn't
Mm,
believe in abundance,
yeah,
doesn't believe in, that we can have what we want,
right.
kind of uses the statistical chances of things happening
Yeah,
with
yeah.
nothing else in the
And it's
equation.
and it's all energy.
Yeah,
It's all energy. It's like the
yeah,
belief, the thoughts, it's energy.
yeah, yeah,
Just like my doubts and my fear and my worries are energy, but
yeah,
those things are working against me and
yeah,
blocking what I want,
right,
where the belief and the expectation, or even the imagining, what if, or wouldn't
yeah,
it be nice if, is the allowing energy. It's all
yeah,
drawing. It's either those things are drawing it to me, or the doubt and the fear are pushing it or blocking it.
yeah.
But it's there, which is fascinating to me. It's all there.
One
And
of, one of the
all I need
most,
to do is just let go.
just not
Not
actively
block
prevent
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Just stay out of the business of actively preventing it. One
Isn't
of the
that
one of the
cool?
best one of the best examples of that I've heard. I think I mentioned it probably back in season 1 at some point, but I watched an episode of Oprah's Soul Saturday or Soul Sunday. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
blanking on the name. Um, and she had John Bon Jovi, the rock star, on, and he told this story, and I'm just like, oh my god, this just is like so emblematic of how our American culture, at least from my experience, handles some of the stuff. He was at home in New Jersey. He was in the driveway of his mansion in New Jersey. He was washing in his driveway his, 6-figure sports car, and taking care of it. And his next door neighbor came over and bragged about how he had just successfully talked his son out of wanting to be a professional bass player in a rock band,
Mm.
because he was proud as a parent because he talked his kid out of this dangerous thing that he was going to do. And literally, like, John Bon Jovi's like reenacting it. It's like, I have a cloth on the car that came from me playing guitar, and this guy's telling me how great it is. And it's one of those things, is like what I relate to with that dad is, again, it's the statistics thing.
Mhm.
And I hear people say this all the time. If somebody wants to be like a professional actor, or a professional musician or whatever, it's like, oh well, there's so much competition, the odds of you making any money are really low.
So
Like,
that's a resistant thought.
yeah,
That
100%.
that right there is a resistant thought. And
Yeah,
that's the doubt
yeah,
and the non-belief.
yeah,
Yeah. And catching those things, right? And I
yeah,
love that, we all have an emotional guidance system. So I can tell when I think a thought if it makes me feel bad.
yeah,
Now I'm catching myself. I'm like, oh, my inner being doesn't isn't that's a that my inner being doesn't agree with that thought. That's
Yeah.
why I feel that way. Not because it's true, bad, right, or wrong. It's just like it's out of alignment.
Yeah.
Because my inner being, everyone's inner being, is only focused on those positive requests. And that's why it's done. Think about it.
Yes.
This is what I'm getting into now. It's like it's blowing my mind. It's like, I heard this morning Abraham saying, um, you've already done the hard part. You've lived the contrast.
Yeah.
These rockets of desires shot out when you knew what you didn't want. You knew exactly what you want. It shot out. My inner being received the positive request, is focused on it, and law of attraction is responding to my inner being's focus.
Yeah.
So it's done because my inner being has no doubt whatsoever that I could be, do, or have anything I want.
Yeah.
So it exists. So I'm the only holdout. Whether
Yeah.
you believe it or not is irrelevant unless I believe you. If you doubt it, then it's
Right.
my energy,
Right.
right? So then all I have to do, and this goes back to what I was saying, a couple episodes ago, is like, what do we have to lose by believing?
Yeah.
And I thought my first response was nothing. And then now that it's been coming up on reminder, like, what do you have to lose by believing? And it's like, oh, you know what I have to lose? My fear, my
Well,
worry.
yeah, and it's a weird thing. I remember when I was in my first rock band in New York City, Victor Bravo, we used to talk. We observed this thing where my drummer and I, was just two people in the band for most of our history together. We just observed this thing, and we just sort of realized like the thing we have to like look out for, to be watchful of, is successes, not failures, because we just saw that so many bands like broke up or had problems or lost their key member or whatever right after something really great happened for them. It was the
Mm,
opposite of what you'd think, because
upper
like it,
limit, upper
yeah,
limits.
like when people tell stories about, oh, this actor, blah blah blah, then moved to LA and became, got cast in this movie, and then somebody saw them, thought they're really great, so they put them in a bigger movie, in a bigger role, whatever. Like what gets lost there sometimes is it just, a lot of times we tell that story as if it was inevitable,
Yeah, yeah,
like the person just was gonna be, Tom Cruise was just gonna be amazing and brilliant and successful, like there was nothing that was ever gonna stop him. And it's like, well, people do have different levels of confidence, but
right.
and that affects people in different ways in different times, but um it's not, I don't know, maybe you can finish my thought there. I'm having trouble formulating it.
Well, what came to mind right now is I heard a story about Tim McGraw when he was younger,
Country
and he
music
wanted,
singer.
yes, country music singer. He wanted to be a professional singer in country music. And there was some producer or someone that said, you have a horrible voice
Yeah.
and you will never be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and imagine if he had believed him,
Yeah.
he may have stopped and
Yep.
then never have done it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he was thinking in that moment or what happened after that. But he is a huge success now
Yeah.
and has had, multi-millionaire probably from his music, and has toured for years and has number one hits. And I just think about that. Like, someone can tell us something and they're not our higher self. They're not
Yeah.
God, the creator of all that is. How the do they know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
no.
and again, it goes back to that thing I was saying. Like, if you're firm in your belief of something, and somebody says the contrary, is that sort of example people use sometimes of like when somebody criticizes you for your purple hair when you don't have purple hair. It's like you don't suddenly go, "Oh my gosh, yeah, my hair is terrible." It's like I don't know what that dude's talking about. He's clearly wrong. I'm not going to even consider it. I just want to, because you're a big country music fan. I'm a big rock music fan. There's a story of Rob Thomas, the '90s rock star, and he said that when he started out, he didn't think he could sing very well, and it wasn't like anybody was telling him he was great. He just had fun doing it. So he told himself, "I'm gonna do this until people stop telling me to do it." And and then he says, and then one day people started telling me to stop doing it, and I just didn't.
That is great. I love that. Oh my gosh. I love that. And I think about just my vibration is shifting. I can feel it within. I
Yeah.
was talking to you earlier about that in friend time. And I often go back to, when I was in my 20s and what my vibration was like then, and how it has shifted over time. And I want to acknowledge my 20-year-old, because she was pretty badass.
Mhm.
And yet I had some, deprivation thoughts, and to think like where I am now with those types of thoughts, it's like, wow, it really has shifted.
Mm.
And I'm looking forward to, 10 years from now, of what shifting that vibration,
Yeah.
the evidence of that.
Yeah.
So, but it all feels really good right now, most of the time. You touched upon something. Oh, so when someone says, like, I'm practicing a belief of, a particular thing, and then someone I'm chatting with says something to the opposite of it.
Hmm.
And I had this happen the other day, and I'm at that point where I was able to walk away from it and go, oh, well, one step, they're a human being. Because it kind of hit me, it kind of
Hmm.
hurt. It
Yeah.
kind of was like, I had doubt then in myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, but what if they're right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, whoa, wait a minute. How does that thought feel? Doesn't feel good. Oh, my inner being thinks something totally different.
Hmm.
And then 3 is like, oh, they're a human being and they have their doubts and fears and beliefs and
Yeah.
limitations. So I'm going to listen to that thought that doesn't feel good, that came from their voice. Or
Yeah.
am I going to listen to my inner being, who knows I can be, do, or have anything, is focused on it, and it exists energetically? Which one
Hmm.
feels better? Ooh, this, you know. And so I remember hearing Abraham talking about how we can have situations happen, and then we can flush that out, so
Hmm.
that when it happens again, it just doesn't hit us anymore,
Yeah. I
because
feel like
we
those
worked
are,
about those beliefs and
yeah.
those thoughts.
If you're open to it, those can be opportunities to get better at believing the truth, like,
Or sorting it through so that we
yeah.
can, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I've heard Abraham talk about that before, and I was never able to do that, because
Yeah.
so many times I start believing what the other person thinks, and I start worrying
Yeah.
and projecting negatively onto something that I don't want. And this was the first time I was really able to walk through it and kind of
Mhm.
think it through, to a point that felt much better to me. I'm like, eventually things do come about that we do want.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I continue to have to work on, and I get better at it over time, of course, but is that there's also that voice in my head that's like when something I want doesn't materialize, I don't know how to say it. My brain initially thinks it's taking too long.
Yeah.
Um, then there's a voice that kind of said, I don't think I really hear it this way anymore, partly because of this podcast, but there's still doubt, some sort of doubt thought
Yeah.
of like, yeah, the law of attraction isn't working. Like, I tried really hard
Mhm.
to believe this thing and I don't believe it, so it's not happening, so whatever. And what I'm trying to really embrace lately is just understanding that I have different programming of negative beliefs or lack beliefs or whatever around different things, and so
Mhm.
some things are now easier than others, and some
Yeah.
things are still, I'm
Mhm.
dating right now, and the partner is not immediately coming, and that's because in that area
Yet,
I have a lot of,
yet is there,
yes,
right? Is
yes,
there. Just because physically
right,
the woman of your dreams isn't in your bed right now or on the couch waiting for you to finish your podcast,
right.
she energetically, she
Yeah,
is.
she is, yeah, yeah,
And that is the part of when I was going back to, is like, what do I have, what do I have to lose in believing?
yeah. Hmm.
Because then practicing that vibration will bring about
Yeah,
that actually happening. Because she's just right around the corner, right?
yeah.
He's just right around the corner. um and speaking of dating, that one experience that I had with David and Murietta, when I think about that experience and how I felt and what I saw in that person, that feels really good.
Hmm.
when I think about the dating apps and the experiences that I've had there, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to
You
that.
know, and so this has been my experience when I've been like, okay, I'm going to practice the experience of David. When I've done that for a couple of weeks, then I match with someone. Then
Yeah.
I eventually meet someone and go on a date. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
um so that is evidence right there of that whole law of attraction of like, oh, I'm focusing on what I want over here, and then I get evidence of it.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter, I keep practicing it, and then I don't practice it, and then because the physical reality shows up, and then
Yeah.
so I was reminded recently of like, oh yeah, practice that energy, because
Yeah.
that was really the energy of my person,
Yeah.
and that feels good, and the other doesn't, and
Yeah.
so that's
That's my
really
thing. To your point of like, what do you have to lose? It's like, I think there's like sometimes you find a comfort in the familiar, even if it actually doesn't feel good, it feels comfortable because it's
because
familiar.
it's familiar. Yeah.
And for a lot of things, for a lot of us, it's just like, well, just sitting in the belief that it ain't gonna happen is
Ugh.
just it feels bad, but it's more familiar. And believing in possibility feels strange and uncomfortable. And what if I get my hopes up and it
You
doesn't
know
work
what?
out? Like,
When you asked that question, what came up for me was scary.
yeah, fear. Like you mentioned it, fear. Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's like
no,
a
scary that was it scary that it might happen? What
yeah.
was the
I think it's
scary?
both. I think it's both. It's like you're scared that you'll be disappointed, it won't happen, but you're also
Yeah.
scared of like, oh
What if
crap,
it
I'm
does?
used to my life without it,
Yeah.
and I in this fantasy realm where everything's fine, I want it, but in real life, oh my gosh, like what is my life going to be like when I get this thing?
Right, because like you said, it's not familiar. And
Yeah,
so there's a lot of unknowns. And so
yeah,
that, yeah, that's what it was, like scary. But I think it goes back to, practicing the art of allowing on a regular basis of like where I have that, like, I'm connected to that innate power, and that I just have this practicing that. I think what comes from it, like the meditation and the appreciation and looking for the good, and, reading and listening to material that uplifts me, there's this foundation, this inner foundation that occurs that all is well, and I'm okay, and
hmm
things do work out for me, and that stability.
hmm yeah.
And
Good
then
talk.
it's just one day at a time, and we'll figure it out as we go along.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
just
have
a
to have
lot.
all the answers.
I think that's for me, like just giving myself permission to be wherever I'm at in certain things where I'm still working on the negative beliefs and just it's a practice. I'll get better over
Yes,
time, and don't worry about
absolutely.
getting perfect at it immediately or anything like that.
Oh God, no, I'll never be perfect at it. Oh, I will be when I take my last breath.
Yeah, right. um, well, we're so happy that you joined us for this discussion today. We hope you got something good out of it. Remember that at this time we are posting a brand new episode for you every Monday morning here in November of 2023, or December if it's that late. I don't remember when these things air.
Yeah.
It's November when we're recording it. I think it's still November when we post it. We truly appreciate you doing whatever your platform allows you to do to support us. Oh, Stephanie, do we want to talk about Patreon, or is
Go
that
for it. Yes, it's up and running.
it is? Okay. And are
Yes.
there links in the doodly doo?
That I have not done, and you
Oh,
may
okay.
need to do that.
So maybe we will get this sorted out eventually, but it might be ready by the time we post this. We are now on Patreon, which is a place where, if you're not familiar with it, you can go on there, and there are different levels of support, and you can help support the podcast financially by whatever level you would like to do. So we will do our best.
Well, and you could go to Patreon and look
Mm,
for co-creation
Co-creation
station
station. Yep.
with Collin and Stephanie, and you'll find us there.
Yep, patreon.com. Yep. Okay. And yeah, so if we fully appreciate anybody who would like to go ahead and contribute monthly to helping the podcast going. So,
Thank you.
and we'll try to put the links for that in the doodly doo in YouTube. sometime soon, if not for this episode. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. We love you. We appreciate you. We wish you a happy and abundant week, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Co-Creation Station.
Bye.
And I need to find the stop recording button. Bye, everybody.